So first, let's look at the obvious here. Let's get rid of this issue here. The reason why I think is because I didn't put inside of our column the password. So let's go ahead and get all of this and put it all inside of the password like this. Oh, I should say inside of our column, not the password. Okay, let's go ahead and see if we can structure everything. That's very good. Looks good. If we run this, we should be able to see, hopefully, that these should be close to each other. Okay, that looks really, really nice. So pretty much just like what we have here. Of course, some paddings here and there, but it's okay. Looks good. Now let's go ahead and add this login button. So we must still be inside of our column there. So let's go ahead at the bottom here. So here we're going to create actually another submit, or call a submit button, which is going to be a wrapper composable that we are going to have a button. And for that, we're going to pass the actual arguments. Okay, so text ID in this case. I'm going to say if is create account is true, then the text is going to be create account, else we're going to change that to login. So all we're doing here, we'll see in a second, is that depending on situation, we are going to change the text, the title, to login or create account, right? We'll see that. All right, so passing loading, in this case, it's going to be loading that same variable, and then valid inputs, we're going to pass the valid, right, which is this valid here that we are validating to see if all of the items we added, all of the text fields information we added, if it's valid. All right, sounds very cryptic, but let's go ahead and create this composable so that way we actually can see all in action. All right, so there we go. We have our composable. What's new? One thing we actually need to pass along here is the onClick function here that we're going to pass along. And we're not going to pass anything as a parameter and say unit. Okay. So what we want to happen here, well, it's just going to create a button. And you may ask, why didn't I just create a button as it is straight here? Now, that's very possible, just like it was possible for us to create all of these passwords inputs directly by adding the outlined text field, right? But this gives us a little bit more flexibility, because let's say we decided later that we want to create another form, then we'll have to repeat ourselves. With this, we can just go ahead and call, for instance, the password input, or in this case, the email input, and pass different arguments, and then we're ready to go. So then we'll have a very consistent look as well. Okay. It takes a little bit of time, of course, because you have to code it up, but then you're set up correctly. So I really recommend you to think in these terms. Whenever possible, wrap it inside of another composable so that then you can pass arguments that will modify the actual button in this case, or the text field and so forth. All right. Okay, so for our onClick here, of course, I'm just going to go ahead and pass the onClick that is being passed along there. Okay. Okay, so after this, let's go ahead and add a modifier. And padding about 3 dp, and fill max width. Okay. And then I'm going to pass enabled. I'm going to look at loading, right, the toggling, to make sure that we know exactly the state of our text fields, and make sure that we have this. That way we can control if this looks enabled or disabled. Okay, so that users cannot actually click on it if there's nothing valid or nothing added in our fields. Okay, so but also we need to pass and valid inputs. So this will set out to make sure that we either make this enabled or disabled, the button. That way, if it's disabled, like I said, users are not going to be able to say login. All right. All right, I'm going to pass the shape for this button. Let's put a comma there, then pass shape. I'm going to make it a circle shape like that. So inside, I'm going to put an if statement to say if loading is true, right? I'm going to pass a circle progress indicator as such, and I can also pass more information for our progress indicator in the form of modifier. So I'm going to say modifier, and I want the size of this loading or circular progress indicator to be about 25.dp as such. Okay. Else, in that case, I'm just going to put a text field, or text I should say, and pass in the text ID, which is going to be, maybe the naming is not the best by saying text ID, but that's fine. What we say here is just a string that will give us the text that we're going to add, which is going to be either login or create account. Okay, you'll see that all in place. Pass a modifier, of course, what's new, and I'm going to add a padding all of 5 dp inside of our text, around our text I should say. So right then you're going to see that our submit here are going to have some issues because we need to pass that on click function there. Well, because it's the last parameter that is a function that has been passed as a parameter, we can, yes you know it, use just the lambda as such. So here, then inside here, I'm going to call the on done, and we're going to pass the email again, get the value, and I'm going to trim, and let's pass the password and value, and also trim that. Okay. Depending whether this is create account, which we'll see later, we're going to change the name of the button. So it's either going to be create account for our text ID, name of the button, or login. In this case, if you look, our create account is false, meaning we're not creating an account. That's why it looks the way it looks. That's why we should see login. Okay. So when then they click on done here, notice in this button on click, what happens? Well, we're going to go ahead and invoke the function on click. In this case, it's going to be this on done here, which we are passing this information. So now where we're calling this password here, we should see the email and the password once we run this. Let's see if that's true. Let's run. And there we go. You can see now the login, it's not enabled because nothing has happened yet. Then I'm going to start putting there. I'm going to say pal@me.com, and I go to the next. Hello. The moment we start adding something here, notice it says, okay, something is there. So we can actually start to make this enabled to say, okay, they can log in. If I click on this, let's go to our logcat. We're going to see we have indeed the reader screen, a login screen, pal@me.com, and there is the password that I just added. Because we're getting that information from our user form, we have that trailing lambda, and we have that info. This is great because that means here I can do things like create an account and do all the things that I need. In this case, logging in, right? But you get the idea. All right, so it is indeed working.